What special act of providence did God exercise towards man in the estate wherein he was created? And the answer to this question is, when God had created man, he entered into a covenant of life with him upon condition of perfect obedience, forbidding him to eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil upon the pain of death. Now, in this part of the catechism, we are setting the foundation for what sin is and what God did to remedy sin. It's true to say that we live in a fallen world because Adam disobeyed God in the Garden of Eden. We are subject to futility. Life under the sun, this life in other words, is full of vanities, as we read in the book of Ecclesiastes. In addition to the misery we bring on ourselves by sin, we live in a world of death, pain, and sorrow. We suffer sin's toxic byproducts, as we could say, from headaches to heartaches. Adam ruined everything. So the doctrine of the covenant of works explains how Adam ruined everything. Being God's creation, Adam was bound to obey God. He was his servant. He could expect no thanks from God and no reward for his labours other than the blessedness inherent in serving God, as we read in the book of Luke chapter 17 verses 9 and 10. And we could say that God's act of creation generates a relationship with implicit obligations. That is, that those created in his image must imitate him. For Adam and Eve to be made in the image of God is for them to be in covenant with God. Now, there are many definitions of a covenant. A simple one is that a covenant is a solemn pledge with conditions that promise blessings for obedience and threaten sanctions for disobedience. So here, the condition was Adam's perfect obedience, set before him generally in the commands to be productive and be protective, as we read in the book of Genesis chapter 1 verse 28, and in particular the prohibition not to eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Now, on this tree of the knowledge of good and evil was forbidden fruit. Now, the Hebrew word for knowledge could also mean choosing, and that may better express its importance, the tree of the choosing of good and evil. So for a period of time, Adam was on probation. That is, he had to obey God and not eat from that tree. Now, the other tree, the tree of life, was a pledge to Adam that if he fulfilled the covenant, he would live forever. That is why Adam was later barred from eating from it, as we read in Genesis chapter 3 verse 22. So Genesis does not use the word covenant to describe Adam's situation, but theologians have seen allusions of a pre-fall covenant in Hosea chapter 6 verse 7 and a couple of other verses, for example Isaiah 24 verse 5 and Ezekiel 28 verses 11 to 19, and in particular the comparison the Bible makes between Adam and Christ. Adam and Christ are parallel briefly in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 verse 45 and extensively in Romans chapter 5. Now, Romans 5 teaches that Adam was mankind's federal head or representative. What he did counted for all of us, as we read in Romans chapter 5 verse 12, through one man sin entered the world, and death through sin, and thus death spread to all men. So Romans 5 adds that Adam was a type of him who was to come, that is, Christ. Now, a type or a shadow is a picture of a future event or a future person. Let's carry on. For if by one man's offence many died, much more the grace of God and the gift by the grace of the one man, Jesus Christ, abounded to many. That's Romans 5 verse 15. So the Bible uses the language of condemnation and justification. We are condemned to death because by Adam's covenant breaking, but Jesus did what Adam failed to do. That is, he upheld all of God's covenant requirements as the representative of his elect. Praise the Lord for that. So in the next video, we're going to be looking at how sin started, what sin actually is. Thank you for joining me in this one. God bless.